Radio in motion program loading in 3, 2, 1. Program activated.
Attention everyone, the unpleasant noise you are about to hear coming from your radio is not a mistake.
Okay, first things first, what is your name?
This is Big Sonny playing the best of the 90s and beyond.
Are you ready for this?
Yeah. Radio in motion.
Please do not turn off your radio, but turn up the volume on your receiver as high as it can go.
All right, ready, here we go.
Radio in motion.
All right, thanks for joining me tonight on our 90s Hot Mix, celebrating my 100th episode here. Yes, there's cheers everywhere. It's unbelievable. But yeah, we've definitely got some great music coming up, so stay tuned for that. But first, we're going to talk about, a couple of sad things. Look, I mean, this segment is called The Ugly Truth, and the ugly truth is bad things don't care what season it is, and it is a sad time when everyone's looking forward to spending time with family and friends and the holidays. And one of the main things I'm going to talk about is the death of Rob Reiner, a famous director and more, and his wife. And certainly don't want to diminish, the shooting at Bondi Beach. But it just shows that all around the world, people are dealing with tough things at the moment. And I obviously, I wanted to mention that one. It didn't seem right to say any one tragedy is not worse than the next, but I am going to talk about the Rob Reiner one because, I just have some more details and just some specific things that I wanted to talk to you about that. As far as anything having to do with shootings, this is a tragic thing, irrespective of what, like I said, time of year it is. And again, I hope everyone certainly, just reflects on the good things that we have this year. And your family and friends and your life. And definitely, it's pretty simple to try to do unto others as you would have done unto you. It doesn't always come out in the wash like that. But yeah, talking about Rob Reiner, legendary filmmaker, dead at 78, and his wife, Michelle Singer, she was only 68. I assume everyone would have heard by now, but if you haven't, they were both found stabbed to death in their Los Angeles home, and their bodies were discovered by their daughter, and that's horrific in itself to walk in on that scene. And look, it's still being investigated. I don't ever like to say more than what I've read and what you can read. I'm not the investigator. I'm not the detective. But with anyone who's a suspect or being looked at, it's always innocent until proven guilty. But some of the things I'm going to talk about certainly are items that align with possibility of this person certainly being involved. So their son, Nick Reiner, 32, has been arrested and again, charged as a suspect. Again, we live in a world of innocent until proven guilty, at least in America. And either way, the point is, these two lives are lost, regardless. I know everyone always has this natural emotion for revenge. Someone must be held accountable. And we do live in a society where you do hope that the right people are held accountable. And if it is him, it is. If it's not, either way, my focus is how did we get to this point? And I am going to talk about Nick. So, the kind of facts that are out there certainly align with a lot of troubles that he had. But, whatever the outcome on putting blame on someone, these two people's lives are gone either way, and all those around them have to grieve. But look, if you don't know Rob Reiner, well, then you're definitely not a movie fan. Son of legendary comedian Carl Reiner, and he only died a few years back, which is quite sad. But yes, I'm this old that I remember Rob Reiner on a little television show called All in the Family. And any young person would probably watch that show now and say, this show is bordering on really getting into divisive politics. Well, it kind of did. And this was in the late 70s, folks. All in the Family actually had some quite groundbreaking, serious episodes, considering the fact that it was just a primetime comedy. But yeah, Rob Reiner started on that show. I remember, the father called him Meathead. I remember that specifically. And look, rest his soul, Rob Reiner probably did have a large head. And again, it was just a term of endearment and euphemism. But look, some people start out just an actor on TV doesn't necessarily mean they're going to skyrocket into other parts of the business. Well, Rob Reiner, I tell you, he had a hell of an 80s run that would have rivaled Steven Spielberg. And if there was no Spielberg, you might have just heard the name Rob Reiner at the top of that. The mockumentary, This is Spinal Tap, that is world famous. Actually, all of these are. All of these are woven into film and pop culture history, 100%. Stand By Me. I mean, come on. If there is not a more perfect example of a coming-of-age story of a group of friends from a time that's, long since gone, in the 50s. But the fact that it came out, in the 80s, and even now, it doesn't matter what time period, it's timeless. So, the story and the actors, and obviously, that doesn't come to fruition without the director making a story like that, set in a bit of an innocent time, but definitely a timeless movie. The Princess Bride, come on. If that's not one of your favorites, I don't think we can be friends. That goes without saying. Anybody want a peanut? Look, if you don't know that, you're in the wrong room. Stop rhyming. I mean it. See, you got to know these things. These are standard pop culture references. But yeah, that one is another just fantastic movie. When you're feeling down, you watch The Princess Bride any time of year. And of course, okay, for all the rom-com lovers, you would have all seen When Harry Met Sally. That is a fantastic example of starting off that genre. And A Few Good Men, I loved that one. I actually watched that one quite a bit. Obviously, you would say that's a huge Tom Cruise engine, but look, and it was, but really, that was, Jack Nicholson's moment to shine. Every scene he is in, again, Tom Cruise, I think he finally won sort of a posthumous award, which he certainly deserves from a lifetime of his love for movies. But at that time, Jack Nicholson, he stole every scene in that movie, and deservedly so. He had some monologues that obviously are repeated to this day, and just fantastic. I mean, yeah, Jack Nicholson, absolute professional, and so yeah, an amazing lineup of movies and legacy he's leaving behind. And I didn't realize he was actually the co-founder of Castle Rock Entertainment. And, they were a major production company, behind Seinfeld, Shawshank Redemption. That is, again, historical pop culture references in that movie. And, the thing with Castle Rock, he believed in creating a production company that was able to fund more independent projects geared towards the artist. And if I just had a podcast last week on Netflix and Disney, for that matter, consuming Hollywood like a giant beast. And the art of film seems to be by the wayside, being replaced by algorithms and content. So yeah, the fact that he would be someone to co-found that is fantastic, and that fits. So again, and now we get to the meat of it. It's quite sad. They were both found in their home, stabbed to death. And, I'm going to be honest. Any death is horrific by any means. But the fact that their son, Nick, is a suspect, and the intimate nature of stabbing, I'm going to be honest, it just is. And that's a known thing amongst, sort of criminology. When there's a stabbing and it's close contact and it's repeated, not like a one-off defense wounds when someone uses that as the mean. Two people, by the way, you know what I mean? This isn't in self-defense. This is attacking two people, taking the time to use a knife, a close contact weapon. It just means there's a lot of something there. I say rage, but it could be a lot of things. A whirlwind of emotions all happening for one human to do that to another human. And especially if it is a son or a daughter, a relative of any kind. So, and look, we're going to talk about Nick Reiner, 32, has a history of addiction and struggles, long-term substance abuse, in and out of rehab. And the thing is you think, well, where was their relationship? This is since he was 15, by the way, so a long time. But recently, not too long ago, they collaborated on a movie. He co-wrote it, and it's sort of a semi-autobiographical film called Being Charlie. And yeah, he made that with his father. And, I think that's interesting that obviously at some point, through all this, it's not like he was completely estranged. Obviously, with addiction, it's a roller coaster. There's relapse, but at some point, it was mended to the point where they could collaborate on this project. Getting any movie made is no easy feat, even in today's world. And again, these are just things that I'm thinking about, reading between the lines. But as far as the details, as always, you look them up. And one of the reports is that they recently had a bit of an argument at a party, literally the day before, on the Saturday. This was a Conan O'Brien party. He throws a big party for all his friends at Christmas, and apparently they had, quite a blue. And Rob Reiner and his wife actually left the party. So again, these are all the things that the detectives will look into, and they don't bode well for Nick, as these are the kind of things that they put together. Again, you're innocent until proven guilty, but it doesn't sound good. So, I think the fact that this is very high profile, obviously everyone will get stuck into it and have their opinion, but I suppose, I wanted to talk about addiction, and that this is just assumed that, well, that's part of it. I think the nature of this event is so intimate that there's more than just that going on. There's obviously a lot going on if this was indeed the son. To do something like that to your parents. And I guess with, addiction, there's always this feeling that, well, you blame the drug. And to a certain extent, yes and no. I'm not someone who can comment on that, as I'm not someone who is an addict with drugs. And, part of me always thinks, they say it's a disease, or there's a history. There's mental illness linked to it. I would say when it comes to that, everything is yes. It's everything. There's a lot to it. Whether it's childhood trauma or all this. But my point here is that this is a family who had the means and able to throw money at it. And I'm sure they did over the years. Actual rehab, not just sending someone to an island and saying, fend for yourself. Actual medical rehab and facilities, they don't come cheap. And, Rob Reiner would have been someone who had access to a lot of support. And I'm just commenting. I don't know whether this is good or bad. I just think it does. Maybe it makes you lose hope, actually. Or maybe it makes you feel like, well, when it comes to certain circumstances, we are all the same. And we should always consider helping each other no matter who we are. Because even someone with means couldn't fix this problem, is my point. You can't throw money at it. You couldn't throw money at it and just fix it. And when I say things like, and even addicts, because I've spoken to people who say this, in that even in their moment where they were completely taken over, and 100% it does. You have to understand, addiction is someone can go into a bar and have a drink and be fine. The other person can go into a bar and have one drink, and that's it. They don't remember what they did. Again, there are different degrees to that, and different types of drugs that are well beyond alcohol and would affect any of us in an extreme manner. But for some, it doesn't take much. So, what I'm saying is part of it is this chemical imbalance. Anything we introduce into our body that isn't already in our body, and we are already a chemical mix of balanced, chemicals in our body doing the right things, and sometimes the wrong things. Whether it's adrenaline or dopamine, this is all a balance to calm down and fight or flight, and you get adrenaline. This is already in our body. So you introduce something foreign to it, you're going to get off balance. But my point is, even addicts will say yes. To a certain extent, you introduce that someone who's already has that addictive nature and unable to handle that extra chemical in their body. I still, and again, don't take my word for it. You find this out for yourself. There is still accountability. I do not believe there's 100% loss of accountability. Now, if you woke up the next day and you don't remember what you did, the point is at that point is your accountability. Okay? And yes, no, I'm not a doctor. I'm not saying I am. I'm not a psychiatrist. There are certainly other factors if someone actually does have a mental illness compounding this. But if you are someone, which I'm going to say, the fact that Nick was able to make a movie with his father, and someone who's obviously quite intelligent and stable, in your moments of clarity, you need to be able to find that strength. And not all people do. So I get that. It's something you live with for a lifetime. 100%. Absolutely. You go to Alcoholics Anonymous and you go through the steps, and it's every day forever till you die. That's also, I'm not having a go at that. It's just that amongst that, there still is accountability. And I do hope that more and more, people are able to get the right treatment, and they're given the right advice and the right support so that you can continue those moments of clarity. And I'm only saying this because there's just an assumption that, it's the drug, and it's obviously a history of trauma or whatever happened in mental health. And all of those become the excuses, and they remove the person out of it. And again, I'm sure someone who gives that advice would throw me under the bus and say, what the hell do I know? Again, that's why I'm just here to have a chat and have open discourse. I'm not here to tell you what's what. I'm just giving my opinion on the fact that, these kind of things, this one is going to be sensationalized because it is such a high-profile murder. But I think this sort of thing happens more often than you think. And I don't necessarily mean coming to such a bloody and sad end, but close to it, or possibly other versions of this. And that's the part that does make me sad. And I wish people would realize, again, we all just need to recognize that we're all capable of great things and difficult things. And without support, any of us could slide. Any of us could fall into a place that we feel we can't get out of. And our only way out is to do something like this. And again, maybe it's something to where, he was on a cocktail of drugs. And if he wasn't, again, I am just speculating, that would be worse. I'm not saying I hope one or the other because it's too late. Rob Reiner and Michelle are gone. You can't get them back. But for Nick to be able to reflect again, if this is him, to reflect on what he did and save his soul, it would be certainly more difficult if this was done while someone was sober and in your right mind. Again, no idea about his mental health or what his right mind would be. Either way, anyone who does this is not in their right mind. And for all those that are in prison for murder and have been seen fit for trial, meaning they believe that you do not have a mental health issue and you are going to prison, it also, makes me realize that some people have very low affect, and that's more of a psychopathic nature, and that's a bit different, which is also very scary. That means they're able to do this while they're calm and in their right mind, their version of right mind. So again, there's also this assumption that, everyone who does something bad is a maniac or they're nuts. That was actually a line in the movie Seven at the end when they finally caught him. It was Brad Pitt sort of saying, you're just crazy as a loon. Don't do that, because you're deluding yourself. The fact is that makes it okay for you to accept it. And again, a lot of us might be like that. It's better to accept the fact that someone does someone so heinous, they must be out of their mind, so you can live with the fact that everyone around you would not be capable of that. I'm just saying, I'm not trying to make it worse, but it's those that are capable of this kind of violence and they're actually fine with it. That's a whole other level of problem. Look, any mention of addiction since he was 15 and in and out of rehab, that's it's not a good start. And again, it's tragic all around. There's no way out of this one. And again, if it wasn't him, then we're talking about nothing, and the tragedy is horrid, and I hope they catch the person. I'm only talking about the fact that right now, as this goes to air, he's a suspect, and the history here certainly aligns with something. I'm not saying it could have been foreshadowed, but it needs to be monitored. It just needs to be understood. And I still say there's no excuse. So this was my point leading up to this. I wouldn't excuse him, even with all these things, because inside there's still some accountability, and that's quite sad that it got to this point that you let yourself, do such a violent act on, your parents. That again, I don't know the story. We'll find out more. I have no idea the relationship between Rob Reiner and his son, but I can't imagine that there was, I don't think he was someone who was a tyrant. Again, I'm sure we'll find out more, but on the surface, it's tragic, and it's not looking good in general for the son. But I certainly hope this is the kind of thing that we all learn from. And in general, it's quite a loss. It's a loss if any human dies. You don't have to be a Hollywood director, but this happens to align with the fact that it was someone that, when you have that sort of talent, you are able to affect people all around the world, and that's rare. And I don't think people like that. I don't think Rob Reiner was like that. You don't seek that for fame and fortune. There's no way someone like him who was so passionate about movie making to make something like The Princess Bride, and Stand By Me. That is someone seeking emotion and a story and a true lover of film. And I myself am someone who I love film. I love how they move us and touch us and can affect us forever. So when someone who's part of that, who provides that to us, and I believe it's also an important part of how we are all stable and how we share that and we come together. I've talked about this before. I think coming together, watching movies in the theater, I hope that never leaves, because I think that's an important, cathartic, therapeutic thing for all humans. And no, streaming at home is not the same. It is not the same as going to a place with a bunch of strangers and you sit down and you experience something and you're all experiencing it on different levels. And the best, though, is when you all have the same reaction from every culture and gender and age, all sitting in one, isn't that one of the most beautiful things? You could be on political divide and you're all just strangers and you are moved by something on the screen. And again, you could say the same for a play or whatever, but I personally like movies. And this is something that Rob Reiner provided to the world, and he did it well. And so that's why it's certainly a loss either way, beyond the fact that it's a loss of lives, and that is tragic. But also someone who, was able to affect the world. So the world will certainly mourn. And I suppose we'll learn more as more facts come out. That's my thoughts on Rob Reiner. So very tragic, and I'm not sure what else to say. All right, well, we'll end on that note, and we'll be right back for more of our 90s Hot Mix on my 100th show on Radio in Motion. You're listening to 99.3 FM Sunbury Radio.